Welcome to Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready, we're about to live in your head rent-free. Hello, Otterites. This is episode 151. I am Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis.
So, a reading before we get started. Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table. Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights in one-night cheap hotels and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells. Streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent to lead you to an overwhelming question. Oh, do not ask, what is it? Let us go and make our visit. In the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. That's the opening of The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock.
Oh, yes.
My favorite T.S. Eliot poem. And I know poetry is probably not only kind of off the reservation for us, but probably something that I think, a casual listener might want to skip to the next episode on us. But
no, don't do that. There's lots of good stuff coming.
There's lots of good stuff coming. So stick around. Stick around. But I want to talk T.S. Eliot.
Yeah, we're talking about the man.
And
the works.
And as a hero, and we talk about craft. He is a foundational poet for the 20th century.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Poetry doesn't always appeal to the average person. And certainly older poetry is rare for it to appeal to me.
Like? There once was a man for Nantucket. Oh, wait, you mean different kind of poetry.
You went there. Oh, wow. I'm sorry. There once was a woman from Venus whose body would... Never mind. That's right. Even Data did that one.
Sorry. That's okay. No, it's good. It's good. But Eliot is one of those people, one of those writers in high school. And I know in high school there's lots of other things to be interested in. But he put hooks in me right from the first.
Really?
Much like an Orwell would in novel, in fiction, but in poetry, Eliot grabbed me. But Eliot was more than a poet. He was also a playwright. Yes. Murder in the Cathedral.
One of my very favorites.
Absolutely one of the best.
Yes. Of course, about the murder of Beckett.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a cultural critic, an essayist. And of all things...
Publisher.
Yeah, he worked for a publisher, was the director of a publishing house, and an editor. And the tentacles of what he did flow through to, even today, the musical Cats. If you've ever watched a performance of Cats and enjoyed it, or hopefully you didn't enjoy the movie that bombed rather horribly, but...
Yes, like Hiroshima, unfortunately.
Yes, but that's based on a children's book he wrote.
Didn't know that.
Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats. That was then adapted by Andrew Lloyd Webber into the musical Cats. Eliot's influence also extends to Francis Ford Coppola. Pardon me, Francis Ford Coppola. I guess I need a slug of bourbon here.
Yeah, please, go right ahead, sir.
But Eliot is who Kurtz quotes when he reads poetry to Willard in the Hollow Men. The Hollow Men.
I don't know if that's in every version. I know it's in.
Yes.
There's parts of that Kurtz piece that were cut for the theatrical version that were restored in the redo version later. But I do believe that was kept in
yes,
all
I believe
versions.
It's in all versions. Kurtz strolls through his compound with Willard as a captive, reading out Eliot.
Now, let me just interject something here, because it's one of the things that I think is a fascinating trope. And I don't mean trope in the good sense, as in things you expect out of a certain kind of story.
Right.
I mean almost in the cliche kind of sense.
Yeah.
Is that guys that are just a little bit crazy are often into the poetry stuff. You ever notice that?
Oh, yeah. Well, they have to justify their position to the hero and to the audience for being a villain.
Well, it's almost like if I'm into poetry, it means I'm deep.
Yeah, that's right.
Deeply crazy, but that's the
Well,
one that has
you know.
nothing to do with the other.
Right. It's like I said, if you were in college in the '60s, if you could quote Nietzsche, you got laid.
Well, it does make Nietzsche much more appealing. I will
So
admit
there
that.
you go. And I think this is, but the milieu of Eliot is
Ooh,
again.
good word.
Oh, you did it. Oh, you went there. Oh, wow. Very
That's,
good.
That's
good.
a pretty good bourbon word
That's
too.
a good
after
word.
that.
That's a very good word.
Odorites, we're here at Studio F, the Baxter Building.
We are, yes.
We've already had a couple shots of wild turkey, and we're pretty lubed up. It's
More to come. Well, to do poetry well, a little lubricity.
Yeah, it
coming
might
from
be
that.
needed, but he is one of those guys that is part of that, like Hemingway. He's not quite a lost generation person, but he's profoundly affected by his experiences in the early part of the 20th century.
Right, because he's going to be a little bit older than Hemingway, isn't he?
Yes, he's actually born in the 1880s,
Right.
and he was born in the U.S. He's born in St. Louis,
Right.
But he
Boston family.
Yes,
Brahmin.
and they're well off. They're involved in business.
Yeah, he's 10 years Hemingway senior.
Yes, but he moves to Britain at age 25, a few years before the war,
Right.
and eventually would convert to the Anglican Church and really try to be British. So it's a very unique individual.
Yeah, he gave up his U.S. citizenship. He didn't just convert to Anglicanism. He converted to being British.
Yes, and he really did feel he was British. Oxford and all of this stuff. Worked for a British company in publishing in Faber and Faber. But he's profoundly affected by those European experiences.
Yeah.
He did not go and fight. He was a little older. But he was part of those years of a Europe searching for meaning, searching for purpose after the war. And everything's quite the mess, as we know, from the 20s and 30s, and there's economic depression, the rise of Nazism, all of this stuff. And it's very difficult for those in the arts and letters. They've got to figure out a place.
Right.
So, and listeners, you may have heard a few of these names of these poems. The Hollow Man, Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, and probably the most profound is called The Wasteland.
Right.
It's a lengthy, near-epic poem,
Well,
profoundly influenced by Ezra Pound, his close friend.
even if people don't know T.S. Eliot and his poem The Wasteland, I guarantee they know Stephen King, because Stephen King directly, not lifted, but was directly influenced by The Wasteland to do the Gunslinger series.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, Roland is the name of his gunslinger. That's from The Wasteland. And the Hollow Man is a phrase that he turns into something in another one of his books that he ultimately ties all together and related to some of this Gunslinger series. But it's, so, again, incredible reach. T.S. Eliot to Stephen King. And there's a direct line.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's just, again, just the hooks. And how does a poet put hooks into a 17-year-old from the South End who doesn't know anything? I just don't know. I don't understand. But these profoundly affecting things in school, again, Orwell or Bradbury with Fahrenheit 451, it's in here. A lot of people, Lord of the Flies, William Golding.
Yeah.
That's a very influential foundational work that you always had to read, probably as a freshman in high school, and it grabbed you.
Uh-huh.
And you, but this really did grab me right from the start.
Which work in particular?
Prufrock.
I was going to ask you if it was Prufrock.
Yes.
Because that's written right around the beginning of the war. That's in 15. That's right as the war is going on. And it is an absolute masterpiece. It was considered outlandish at the time.
Yes. Literary critics, it was so different and so unusual.
And what is that poem, or is that one of the other?
It is a poem.
Poem.
The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, which appeared in a larger work.
Yes, but it is one of his earliest published poems.
Yeah.
Again, Ezra Pound
It's
is
very-
influencing him and going, hey, this is stuff that needs to be out there. Let's get it published.
It's kind of before his time in many respects because it's a reflection on the profound power of impotence and disillusionment, which the world would be taken by storm of in just a few short years.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very prophetic in writing all this down because war has just barely begun when he's doing this.
It's a very introspective work.
Yeah, it's similar to James Joyce
Yes.
in his stream, which was a contemporary.
Yes.
Because it's written stream of consciousness, which
it would really perfect more in The Wasteland,
Right.
where it's stream of consciousness of multiple voices.
right.
Proof Rock is really a single voice.
It's not that dissimilar from Ulysses.
Yes.
Because that's ultimately, Bloom and his journey through the day with Ireland in Ireland, but it's focused differently.
Yes.
And which Proof Rock's not that long, if I recall correctly.
No.
And it's almost depressing
Yes.
in a way, and it's got that, I don't want to say nihilism aspect to it, because it's not Nietzschean.
No, it isn't nihilistic. It isn't self-destructive.
Right.
But it is self-reflective.
It's almost like there's an aimlessness here, a malaise, good word, that cannot be conquered. And that's what the protagonist, the speaker, is meditating on. And it spoke to people.
Yes.
Yourself in particular. it
Yes,
sounds like.
it's a how do I view myself when I feel outside of others? If I'm not connected to the others, how do I do that? How do I get connected? How do I view myself? And to a nerd, this is the first nerdy poem in a way.
Oh yeah, in many
This
respects,
is not
speaks to the outsider.
right. I mean, this is a definite departure from Byron or Shelley commenting on this larger world and heroism and the Greek War of Independence. This is very much a man. I don't know who I am.
Yeah.
I don't know who I am. What do I do? And the part of it that is to me the best. The best part.
That's pretty heavy existential stuff for a 22-year-old to publish.
Oh,
It is.
absolutely.
It's terrific.
And he steals the structure is the same as Dante. He works. He deliberately riffs off of that, but he steals from Shakespeare. He's got Hamlet. He's got Henry IV in here.
Yep.
He's got Twelfth Night in here. And so you're learning about other things if you don't know them. And for high school, you probably don't.
Yeah.
It's a broad-based look at the world of who am I and what is the point.
Yeah, what am I doing here? How do I relate to these other people? And what happens if I say something to this woman and she goes, "What are you talking about, doofus?"
Who am I? How did I get here? Where is my beautiful wife?
That's right. That's right.
There you go. It is. It is.
That's right. Yeah.
Talking Heads.
Talking
You
to David
don't
Martin,
get-
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, you don't get to the Talking Heads, and you don't get to any of this that's in between, whether any of the 20th century poets, without starting at Eliot.
Yeah.
And that's so influential. But this is the part, this is down into the poem a bit. "No, I am not Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be. Am an attendant lord, one that will do to swell a progress, start a scene or two. Advise the prince, no doubt, an easy tool. Deferential, glad to be of use. Politic, cautious and meticulous. Full of high sentence, but a bit obtuse. At times, indeed, almost ridiculous. Almost, at times, the fool." And I just love that. It's like, no, I'm not the center. I'm not the hero. I understand that. I'm just a guy.
Yeah.
I'll be there.
You're Horatio, to continue that, to Hamlet. You're the buddy, but you're also Yorick, the fool.
And Polonius.
And Polonius, too. Yeah,
You
that's
know.
right. I mean, it's all kind of
Yes.
mixed up all in there together.
Yeah.
And that's what, that's beautiful. That's
To a nerd, that's like, oh, somebody gets me.
Mm-hmm.
And he got me, 100 years ago, almost. So that's you guys you're dying to why does he mean something to you? Because I always felt like he was speaking to me.
That's what makes it good poetry, right there.
Yeah.
Right. That's ultimately what where poetry stands or falls in these respects. You must be moved by it.
Yes.
In some fashion.
Yeah, because on its own, it's not objectively entertaining. Or titillating might be a better way to put it.
Yes.
Although I'm sure some poetry can be. Again, there once was a man from... Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
But, that's the thing about poetry. You either get it either speaks to you or it doesn't. There's very little in between in my experience.
Yeah. And what does speak to you? What kind of poetry does? I always liked Houseman as well. Terrence, This Is Stupid Stuff. That's a fun, interesting poem as well. This one, Eliot feels more desperate.
Yes, that definitely.
Because as he moves on from Proof Rock, then the Hollow Men and the Wasteland do become more about the world and what is all this? What is the point of all this? What are we doing here?
Yeah.
We are the Hollow Men. We are the Stuffed Men. Headpiece filled with straw. What is all the purpose of all this?
So let me ask you this, and maybe this is if you don't want to answer this, feel free to say no. I don't want to talk about this. But the question that immediately has come to mind, since you say this spoke to you, is what was it about what was going on in your life at 17 that made you in that same place? And again, that might be a little more introspective than we want to go on this show. But I mean, it kind of begs the question. It spoke to you, but in what way?
Who were you that it made it work so well?
Yeah.
Well, I was a skinny kid from the South End at a private school in a class where a lot of kids played sports.
Mm-hmm.
And all boys.
Right.
So, relating to the girls was difficult.
Oh, on multiple levels. One, because you're a skinny nerd from South End.
Yeah.
But also, you didn't get the opportunity every day like those of us who went to public school.
Right. So, if you're in co-ed school, you get a little bit more opportunity to interact. And a Protestant in a Catholic school. Mm-hmm. So, somewhat didn't fit in there.
Bit of fish out of water.
Yeah. Fish out of water is exactly what I was going to say. On multiple levels.
Yes. And so, nowadays I view my high school classmates very differently. They are, by and large, outstanding men. They really are. But that doesn't necessarily mean they were outstanding 17-year-olds.
Oh, I find that almost nobody is an outstanding... If you're an outstanding 17-year-old, it usually means you're a big jerk. Because that's how you are outstanding as a 17-year-old. How to stand out.
Yeah.
But yes, many of the people I went to high school with, it's like, I would have pissed on and put them out if they were on fire.
Yeah.
But, as adults, we're all, hopefully, much better people.
Yeah.
People I never would have spoken to.
So there were a couple of bullies and, again,
as always,
weighed about 110 pounds back then. So
soaking wet.
Yeah, and so you find some meaning in whatever you can find.
And this was there.
And this was there, and among other things. And I don't mean to say, oh, I had no friends, or I had friends, and
right.
I had classmates I was close to. But you're always struggling.
See, now one thing you just said makes your interest in Nietzsche more understandable.
Yes.
Finding meaning where you can.
Yes. And yes, understanding of it's okay to be different is a spot where Nietzsche can be influential. The same as Eliot.
We're all individuals.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm not.
And listeners in the 80s, you didn't go get a tattoo so that you could be an individual like everyone else.
Right.
Yes.
Very true.
Yes.
You dressed all in black.
Which I did a few
Yeah.
times. I had the black overcoat, so I did a little bit of a goth thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we didn't all go get a tattoo so that we could express our individualism, just like all of our friends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just did it. We did the same thing, just different ways. Yeah.
And then you find again that Eliot he speaks to you, but then you discover, he's now intertwined with, say, Conrad, who I really enjoyed as well. And that's influencing these other great pieces of art like Apocalypse Now. Mm-hmm. And so you start to see where all this stuff goes. And it's like, wow, this is a guy that we don't even realize, again, influenced everything that came after.
Very true.
Yeah. So, and again, an interesting life, troubled marriage,
Way ahead of his time there.
Yeah, so not completely uncommon, but, troubled marriage and
He did stay
a lot of
married.
demands.
He did stay married to her, did he not?
No, eventually they were legally separated with he and Vivian.
Yeah.
But he did not remarry until she died, I think. She died in an asylum.
A legal
After their
separation is a
separation.
different thing than a divorce, because even in the 1920s, divorce was not yet legal in England, because I think that was 1930, mid-30s, something like that.
Yeah, and they did not separate,
Unless you're the king, of course.
until the 30s. And she would, in the late 30s, be institutionalized by her brother, and she died in 47.
Right.
So he would remarry after that.
Yeah, and was institutionalized this whole time. So much of her mental difficulties colored what he would do.
Yes, it squeezed on him and colored his perspective as he's writing things like The Wasteland and The Hollow Men. But he would eventually remarry to someone that worked for the publisher who was younger, and she kind of, after his death in the 60s, sort of became the guardian of his legacy. So
Interesting.
I gotta say, you were way deeper than I was in high school.
not always. Trust me, I liked a good dick joke when I was 17 as well.
Well, who doesn't? I mean,
Well, if
you
it's
today.
enough. That's right.
But I mean, this is not where my, I guess, introspection went. I don't know. I guess you say my introspection was less deep. It wasn't as. I guess it just wasn't in areas that were more associated with higher thinking, this sort of thing.
You had a creative outlet as well, though. You were an actor.
That's true. That's true.
And an artist.
And an artist, yes. So maybe that had something to do with it. But even so, being an artsy fellow, I still really wasn't into poetry all that much. I just didn't. I don't know. I guess I just, for those people in those kinds of groups, it was almost more of a snooty approach.
Yeah.
To this sort of thing, and I was never about that.
Yeah.
And
I didn't want to be snooty about it.
Right. Yeah.
It was definitely not everything. Like Dylan Thomas didn't jump off the page at me, and that's somebody that's very influential and important in that era.
Right. I mean, you weren't busy filling up journals full of notes and little doodles and whatever about the deep meaning you found in this one line of this particular poem,
right?
Unlike what some of the contemporaries might have done.
Yeah, I just carried with me stuff as I went forward.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it. I mean, that's probably a good description of what all of us have done. Again, in varied fields, in varied ways. We all have a background that is similar in that way, I think. That we have carried bits and pieces of the stuff that we have encountered that has meant something to us. Yeah. And, maybe we're just coming really late to it, but, finally putting it all together in our mid-50s.
And it's not that my classmates did not carry things forward with them, but they often more carried their personal experiences in a social setting
Yeah.
with each other, where they learned and grew with each other and moved forward with that. Whereas some of us grabbed hold of these things that we read that meant something, and we carried those forward instead, and then had to come to the social end of it down the road a little way.
Yeah, I kind of wish that somewhere along the way I had stumbled into, or somebody had taught me, or explained to me how, hey, maybe this would be a good thing how to approach things, to look at things in that way a little better.
Yeah.
So, not to turn all this into a bunch of navel gazing, but it's poetry. So what else are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
That's what poetry's for.
But a lot of my childhood memories are very surface level, I guess, in many ways. I find that I don't have the number of memories to draw on, telling stories. Now, part of that is, Mrs. Robert, her family's all down here. My family's all in, the other side of this state, or 400 miles away in Michigan.
Yeah.
So, when you're not around your own family, you have less of an opportunity to rehash all that stuff. So, because she's always amazed when, something will come up and I talk about childhood or family things. Because, it never comes up because we're always with your family. Because my family's not here.
No, there's some truth to that.
But
I think we men, not to go off on a side tangent, but I think it's relevant, we men have a tendency to gravitate towards our wives' families more than our own family of origin.
I don't know.
'Cause I certainly do.
Geographically, that's the way mine ended up being
You have
by
a
default.
logical reason
Yeah.
for it. But no, I tend to spend more with my wife's family than I do with my own. And it just happens that way. I'm just wondering if there's something to that.
Well, you also met your father-in-law before you met your
my wife. That's correct. And there's all that. And I've been integrated into the family very, very well. And
You took pity on him.
Somebody had
well,
to.
and
Yeah, well,
there's-
somebody, yes, on all of us, yes.
Yeah, so-
daughters are often closer to families,
and sons
where men feel the need to be independent.
True.
some truth to that.
I mean,
Yeah.
when you think about a guy either living on his own or married, he's not going to go call mom over, I need to have car work done. Whereas
Well,
a daughter often does. Call and ask dad about.
Well, there's some truth to that.
So you get more. There's more interaction and more integrated. You get pulled into the dynamics. I think with a wife's family, some.
There's truth to that.
Whereas a guy tends to want to make his own decisions without listening to mom and dad. But women are more collaborative. And
There's a little bit of that Oedipal thing going on because guys, and it's also just long-standing in human history. Is that the sons are pushed out?
Yes.
Especially if you're not the first son, you got to go figure out everything on your own. You're just SOL. And even the first son isn't always going to have the easiest time with that. But there's also something about sons and fathers where there's always that little bit of headbutting. And great comical way this plays out. So the former pastor whom we all know and love that has the great bourbon collection. Pardon me. Get choked up thinking about his bourbon collection. And he talks about it this way. You got the athlete out there, dad's out there teaching him how to throw that football, working with him hour after hour, hit a baseball, whatever, hour after hour, night after night, week after week. He achieves, he works his way through a high school program, college, big star, makes it to the NFL, finally gets to the big game, wins the Super Bowl. What does he do? First thing he says when they interview him, "Hi, Mom." Mm-hmm. It's never, "Hi, Dad." The guy who actually helped him build the foundation. It's one of those things. It's just, it's kind of human nature that we do that. And I think women are the same way. I am closer to second daughter than I think my wife is, although she's closer too, but that's partially because second daughter, she just likes to talk to everybody. So, but she and I, we do a lot more stuff. I actually have more in common with her than I ever thought I would. I have a lot in common with first daughter, but she probably talks to Mrs. Robert more than she talks to me. But to be fair, she doesn't talk to all of us all that often because she's busy living her life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's out there.
Yeah. I mean, second daughter is too, but she also just calls home to tell everybody about all of her stuff that's going on.
Yes. I mean, that's Mrs. Martin, has to call and relay all the specifics of dog bowel movements and everything. We can let that go. Okay.
Yeah, that's
Skip a bit, brother.
Skip a bit.
Yeah, send it in an email. That doesn't need to be talked about.
Yeah. So this is a good spot for a bourbon break here at Studio F.
Yeah, after all that, I feel like I need a drink. Good Lord.
Yeah.
That's heavy stuff.
That's a little too many feelings.
Yeah. Good God, man! I only got 4. Sad, mad, glad, and horny.
Yeah, and none of this discussion fit in any of those.
Only one of those really matters.
That's right.
So, first, as I mentioned, I want a toast to Bishop David, class of '84. Fly high, Falcons.
There you go.
You are very outstanding men.
The final class of Bishop David.
Yes,
That's cool.
yes, very much. The final class. And, yes, my relations have been rocky at times, and I wasn't sure I fit, but I admire you guys more and more all the time.
Well, and, some of those friendships did last into college. Because several of the guys went to Bellarmine with you, right?
There were a couple, yeah. There's a couple of guys at Bellarmine, and, of course, Gregor Mendel introduced me to Mrs. Martin, and hoping to have a phone call with Gregor next week, actually, to say hi. I don't get to say hi much to him. He's very, very busy. But he said he would have time and he's going to give me a shout.
Excellent.
It's going to be awesome.
Always cool.
Yes, tell him we said hello.
I will.
Indeed.
He always wants to hear about you guys.
Oh, excellent.
He does.
Awesome.
He wants to say hi to you guys and he wants to hear all about it. And there's just too much to tell. So he needs to be a guest. We need to talk biology at some point and genetics.
Oh, we need to have him on just so he can tell all those stories about you from high school.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he remembers them, but he'll remember a few from when we were out in college and hanging out.
Probably none as good as the trip to Michigan, though.
No, but they were good. They were close.
Yeah. Well, everyone should have friends like that.
Yeah.
And I'd say for the most part we do. Although I don't know how many of you. I don't know that you really hang out or talk to many of your high school friends. I mean, I really only have the one that I talk to.
No, I have the mutual one that we have. Although he and I were not in the same class. Of
course, that's the one who's in Tennessee now, though, right?
No, he's here.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Yes,
well, that's true. That's somebody else.
Yes, TV.
But yes, I do talk to him quite a bit. He's in Tennessee, as you say, so I don't get to talk to him much. I have quite a few friends in there, but they're all professional friends,
right?
So I don't ever call any of them. I wouldn't even know how to call any of them.
All of us are just classic introverts in the sense that we have a small, tight circle of friends. Mm-hmm. I mean, we all can be very outgoing and be the life of the party, but we don't get energized by other people in that same kind of sense that an extrovert does.
I have a massive, long list of friends from high school, but I don't hang out with them.
Well, yes, we all have lots of acquaintances, but we have few friends.
Yeah, there's truth to that.
Yes.
That's right.
Wyatt Earp is my friend.
Yes, and I don't have that many.
Yeah.
That's right.
Hell, I got lots of friends.
I don't. That's right.
So.
Yes.
So I just polished off a snort of
But you did.
wild
I'm sitting
turkey.
here looking at your empty glass, sir.
Yes, and I'm going to have to pause here, I think, because I'm pretty well lubed up for the afternoon. But
now, hang on. There's no reach-arounds going on around here.
No, sir. No.
Oh, wait, different kind of lubed up. Okay,
yes. But boy, that wild turkey.
You're all over these sex jokes today.
I don't know.
They were there. You had to use them, I suppose.
Well, I went to confession last week. Maybe I'm trying to get something up for the next time I go to confession.
Okay, well,
well, you got to have something to talk about. Otherwise, you're just sitting on a bench.
That's right. So I tell the wife if I don't have something to confess, what's the point of going to confession?
Yeah, you're just sitting there listening.
She never buys that as an argument for whatever it is I'm trying to get her to do.
No.
So,
but
that wild turkey was.
We're drinking regular wild turkey again, Matthew McConaughey's favorite.
Oh, it's so good. And
this is really good stuff.
Yeah, it's
really good.
A super go-to. I'm going to have to get a bottle. Pears, vanilla, I really do taste it, and it's so good that it's mellow and smooth and just aged and just goes down just right.
If you don't space it out, not that I'm gulping my bourbon, because I would never gulp bourbon, but if you drink it moderately, close enough, because before I was sipping it with much greater space between, it does build up down in the gullet. It's not a huge thing. It's not like an Angel's Envy that'll has that slow burn down and then just kind of blooms from there. But because you were talking that finish down there is always important too. But yeah, this is fine stuff. And you're right, that pear and that vanilla, just very good stuff.
Yeah, and then it's just like, holy cow, I can actually taste it.
Yeah, that's very good. The taste is there. It stays with the tongue. I mean, I've had several that I'm still drinking it neat. There's a burn in the mouth, but it's not a harsh burn. It's a pleasant burn.
No, I think it's far more pleasant with a little bit of ice, though.
That's correct. I just didn't do it. I could have. I probably should have. I may try this again, but at this point here, it really does. It doesn't get down that esophagus. I don't always like that. I know some do, and that's just what they do. But that bothers me a little sometimes, and maybe it's just me. But I like it when it stays in the upper areas, and this one definitely does.
Anybody else we need to toast or mention here?
Oliva.
Oh,
I want to say hi to Oliva. So he would get a mention here.
Oh Lord, boys! I'm telling you,
Oliva.
Go ahead.
Is Francis's new dog. Not a puppy.
Technically, it's Mrs. Francis's new dog.
I was going to say, let's be clear here. That is correct. It is Mrs. Francis.
But I'm sure he loves his daddy.
Y'all will notice when he was a little bit barky earlier, he does listen to me. He will respond to me.
But he loves his mommy most.
Oh, that's no question as to that. That's where it's at. Yeah. In fact, when I have to be stern with him, it's to her. He runs very quickly, as you noticed.
Yes.
What? He's talking loud to me. It has nothing to do with the fact you're misbehaving, doggy. But that's okay.
And of course, you mentioned Bellarmine, their great success in last week's podcast. Always nice to repeat that, because I just love it. Our alma mater earned a bid to the NCAA Big Dance, even though they didn't get to punch that ticket.
They didn't get to take it, because bureaucracy does what bureaucracy does.
That's right.
So more on our thoughts about that on snakeshonors.com.
That's right.
Robert and I have both posted about Bellarmine's triumph and the NCAA and
their stupidity.
Arch A. Adnes May, because I think if we say the real thing, we owe them a mortgage payment.
Yeah, something like that.
Ugh. And they jealously protect that trademark. So back though to T.S. Eliot in the subject at hand. One of the things that strikes me about many, not all certainly, I'm sure, but many of the people we have chosen for the Our Heroes, people you should know, is just the sheer number of things that they have done. When you look at T.S. Eliot's CV, you're going to see, now granted, these are all kind of related, but, he's poet, playwright, publisher, editor, essayist, all these, now granted, it's all literary bent, but he's not a one-trick pony.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Hemingway, same kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Lots of different things that go in with that. We haven't done them yet. We're going to, but one of mine, Steve, and of course Francis's, Stephen King. He's primarily a writer, but he's also, he's written many of the scripts that have gone for his movies or been involved in the script writing. Mm-hmm. Short stories as well as novels, science fiction, fantasy, and horror.
Right, horror.
As well as some nonfiction. But also he's a musician. Mm-hmm. He's in a music group, which apparently aren't that bad. Not great, but, and they will do some local gigs. Mm-hmm. So, of course, and also recovering addict. So you got to throw that in.
Yeah.
Because you're creative type, you almost have to do that. Or come from a background that involves it.
And you always want to applaud someone who can overcome
absolutely
their own personal
and embrace sobriety and stay there.
Yeah,
because some didn't. I mean, Hemingway was a good example of that.
Well, it does seem to be a common theme. There is something like that, some personal not necessarily failing, because it may not be their own failing. For instance, you and I come from, Francis, you and I come from parents that both have, both of our parents, we come from a background where both of us have alcoholism in the family.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
And I have some added things to go in with that, which neither of us appear to be in any danger of succumbing to.
No, and after 50 plus years, you think
we're not likely to pick it up.
We're not likely to pick it up. It kind of is a thing, and as we've said often, we don't drink alcohol except when we're together.
I'll have a beer occasionally at night because I like the taste of beer, a good beer.
Like Tom T. Hall, you like beer. It makes you a jolly good fellow. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I am round as I shape. I am jolly. So yes.
That's it.
But yeah, most of my real drinking is done amongst friends.
That's right.
I have found that it seems to be a thing with Gen X in that we have been able, as we got older, to observe where older generations were and react to that and say, look, I'm going to be different from that.
Respond.
Yeah. Right. Yeah,
there's a better word.
Yeah, it responds to that. With a deliberation.
Yeah.
It's not, and some thought usually. It's not something where it's a simple reactionaryism where, well, they did that, well, I have to be different, so I'll do that. We try to take what's good with that and continue it and reject what we see as flawed and replace it with something better.
Well, I think that's...
It's a very Darwinian approach, actually.
Well, it's, we got mad at the baby boomers because they used up all the free love before we could get any of it.
Oh my gosh.
True, yes.
Oh, holy mackerel, that is brilliant. That is absolutely...
that's very true, yeah.
That is so awesome. I love it.
And all the recreational drugs, not that we would have been,
Yeah, so as a reaction
it was so
to
passé
that,
by the time that...
as a reaction to that and a reaction to our anger at the boomers, we decided you know what, we'll just do stuff better than you.
Right.
We'll have a better sense of humor.
Better music.
And we'll just, whatever.
It's interesting.
We reject that promiscuity that we didn't get to participate in.
I propose. Now we sort of did this. I think it was. Did we do it for Hoopajou? Maybe why Gen X is.
We did. Hoopajou,
yeah.
Gen X.
We could do that as a our heroes as well. Just the entire generation.
Because we're the generation that has clawed America back out of everything that's happened since 1985.
Yeah.
In a way.
Well, and the interesting thing about our generation is not just that, because that is very true. So when we've talked about this before, our generation, probably more so than prior generations, because honestly, I look at the boomers and I see, their use of poetry was to get laid.
Yeah.
That's basically it. And I'm sure there was some introspection that got deep and what have you, but that also usually involves some LSD and some other drugs.
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, come on, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, to even appreciate Ginsberg and Howl and stuff, that's about drugs and destroying yourself.
But when you look at our generation, we talked about how we have dealt with change better than any generation.
Yes.
Before or since.
We're the whatever generation.
Because we have dealt with the most change. More so than any... I mean, we went... Literally, I lived in a house with rotary dial phones.
Yeah, we do too.
And we now are the generation that mastered smartphones before the millennials. Contrary to what they think.
Yes.
And, because... Granted, this is built on the backs of the boomers. I will acknowledge that. Because of post-war world that the boomers helped, and their parents helped build... I think we had more opportunities. We didn't come from a time where you just became whatever your parents were.
Right. That had changed by our time.
That had changed. And it started changing in the 60s. Yeah, I will grant you that. But honestly, I think the boomers screwed it up. It went off the rails. But I think, our generation is a little bit different. We learned how to deal with change better. Mm-hmm. And we had the opportunity to deal with change better. And to be more introspective. We are the generation that fully embraced what I like to call personal development in a positive way. Mm-hmm. And, it wasn't just because we were trying to get laid like, the 60s boomers doing poetry, not the same kind of thing.
Well, I think the boomers looked back at the past and found flaws, which there's always flaws.
Absolutely.
Right, yeah.
And decided that the whole thing had to be bulldozed.
That's true.
Whereas
yeah.
I think for Gen X, we would look back at the past and see flaws and go, you know what? That was pretty cool, but that sucked. Let's not do that again. And not bulldoze the whole way of life.
There's some truth to that. Vietnam had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
That
we
there
just
was
didn't indict everything about the past.
Yeah, and maybe it's because we did not live through some of the worst of that stuff.
That's right.
As adults, we lived through it as children. I don't really have any memories of Vietnam itself. My earliest memories of the world, outside of my own family, is Watergate. So, but not anything about the withdrawal from Vietnam, even though that's slightly after Watergate, or contemporary.
It's contemporary, very contemporary.
And I do remember a bit of that because at our house, when my father was very meticulous that NBC News, 6:30 every night, I'm watching it. Well, as a TV nut kind of kid, which who loved all that, well, hell, TV's on, I'm watching it. And I'm absorbing a lot of this stuff about the world. It educated me in many, many ways. Early. That's one of the reasons I could read early. I could, I was well versed in a lot of stuff. And of course, you're absorbing a lot of this, both pop culturally, because there's all that in there, and all that went on. And I'm still not quite sure if the baby boomers, the '60s hippies generation, would have if Vietnam made them, or they just simply used Vietnam to make themselves slightly different than they would have made themselves otherwise.
It's probably a little bit of both, in my opinion, because every generation tends to want to rebel from the prior generation. So our generation tends to be far more conservative than the boomers.
Mm-hmm.
The millennials tend to be far more liberal than our generation.
Right.
Who knows what Gen Z is going to be? Because I think it goes millennial to Gen Z. I don't know why we had to.
I've lost track now.
Yeah, well they keep changing it because used to be 20 years as a generation. They keep wanting to change the freaking label every 10 years. That's not a generation.
No, it's really between 25 is probably a better number, between 20 to 30.
Well, when you talk about the boomers, you're talking about those born literally from 45 to 65. That's right. 20 years.
That's right.
Actually, it's 45 to 64 because you are the first year of the Gen X.
That's exactly right.
Whereas we are the second.
With 65.
Yeah.
Yes. And I've often wondered too, and it's a possibility, and I don't know what you guys think of this, but I'm just going to kind of lay this out there. Because you're seeing, like you said, these generational changes betwixt things. The rise of technology and how that has affected things tremendously. Because in many respects, it's our generation that were the digital designers.
Yes.
The computer came of age as we came of age. It began on our watch. Bill Gates is us.
Gates is our age.
Well,
Tim Cook is our age.
No, Gates is he's a boomer.
Is Gates a boomer?
Oh yeah, because Microsoft was founded in the 70s. We didn't graduate high school until 84. 83.
Right, yeah. See, but computers.
But the adopters of what he created were generally Xers.
Xers. Well, we're stronger than that.
Well, in the business world, it would be the boomers that adopted because they would have been the ones running things. Well, boomers and their parents because they probably would have been at a higher level. But because you think about the 80s when everything was being adopted, but all the home computer stuff that was bought for us.
Yes.
Right. We were the digital drivers. How's that?
Yes.
We were the digital drivers.
The disruptors of understanding that this technology can be taken out of the office setting and be meaningful.
Okay.
Right.
Boomers are digital developers. We are digital drivers that make it stick.
Well, and then we also took up that same mantle, though, because, because we are the ones that would be the generation that developed smartphones.
That's right.
Tablets.
Which is where I'm going with this. Millennials are digital adopters. They don't remember a time without some of it, but they don't remember all of it. Whereas Gen Zs, those who are being born now, are complete digital natives. They don't remember a time.
I'd say even most of the millennials are natives because
depends on where you cut that.
I look at my daughters; they do not remember a time when we didn't have a cell phone, when there wasn't a computer connected to the internet in the house.
Yes, but those are two different things.
But-
And I think that
but I mean, that's the environment, though.
Yeah.
it is.
I think the divider...
technological change is something they're familiar with, but the natives, that smartphone really did change everything. It really did change everything, and I think that's where that's where
Yeah.
the children that are being born right now have a very different road to hoe because they are natives to all that with the smartphone. Whereas our children,
I think it's
so.
a very dangerous thing
that's kind of
because
where I'm going with that. Yes,
we even though we were the drivers and the earliest adopters or the benefits. We reap the benefits of the earliest adopters. Like I said, we made our parents buy that stuff for us, if our parents did. I never got that stuff till after I was an adult, but
Yeah.
but you wanted it.
But
You
I
went
wanted
after
it. Yes,
See,
yes,
that's correct.
yes.
It was a thing for us, and that's a generational thing.
In many ways, we had to earn it, and also in many ways, we appreciate it more because we understand what life was like to have to go and check out a frickin' encyclopedia out of the library to look something up.
Yes,
That's right.
we understood that this Dewey Decimal System that we didn't understand made information gathering
A lot easier.
a lot of work.
Right.
A lot of work.
Well,
Yeah.
a lot easier. Dewey Decimal made it a lot easier,
and it was
but it was still a lot of work.
and it was of limited availability to us.
Right.
Whereas the internet is complete availability for everything that you want.
They always try to teach you in school how to use the card catalog, and it just never. The thing about a card catalog, kids, is if somebody moves one of the cards,
You're screwed.
it doesn't exist anymore. Basically, it's in a vacuum.
But I remember using the card catalog, especially at Bellarmine, doing research. Oh my gosh, that card catalog! I could fly through that thing looking for stuff. But the thing was, though, it was still kind of hit or miss.
Yeah, and
even if the cards were all in the right place.
Yeah, because they only had so much data.
Well,
They
not
can
even
only
that.
store so much data because you've only got so much space here, and you have to pick.
Well, yeah, but you still then had to go find the book.
I know, but you see, but that's limited. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Their library, all libraries were extremely limited compared to what's on the internet because and see that's the difference. I think that like my high school term paper I had to write, I had to use only sources that were available in our high school library, which was about the size of the 3 bedrooms in my house.
Right.
And we'll talk about the creative stifling that occurs. You're basically writing to the test. You got to figure out something that you don't care about, but they've got a nice section of information here on.
You're always writing to the test. I mean, that would never.
That was, but true research should be something that you're really.
Yeah, but you know why it's limited to the high school? I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
It's so that it makes it easier on the teacher to check whether or not you're plagiarizing.
Well, that's it. See, and now you have software to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and they still do it.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Get caught on.
And where I was going with that is that, because we had both the time, because, again, we had the time. We were latchkey kids, probably every one of us.
Mm-hmm.
So, our after-school time was not structured. We were left to our own devices. And that kind of carried forward. We had to learn how to entertain ourselves. If we were interested in something, we had to figure out what to do about it. I think that made us a lot more self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
And it enabled us to have the ability to be introspective about this stuff.
That's right. Oh, yeah.
And, for me, my introspection was more of that personal development stuff. All that kind of stuff. That was because it was much more practical. So for me, that was just my bent. This is a little too artsy-fartsy for me, even being into acting and being an artist. But then again, it's not what I do for a living. So, but
I just got to the point where it was like, you know what? I think laughter is what's gonna. I like to laugh. Anybody that make me laugh is cool. I was probably the only person who laughed out loud at Moliere in high school when we were reading Tartuffe.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, this is funny stuff, and everybody's just kind of staring at me.
Mm. But, so you love that line in The Breakfast Club. I love Moliere.
Yeah,
I love his works. Yeah.
So, guys, that's pretty good. We did about 35 minutes on Eliot and another 20 minutes on the Generation X, but that's okay because we like it when stuff that's the point of this kind of thing is
pointless discussion.
Where do you go?
Yeah, well, it's one thing to navel gaze, but then what do you do with it? It's like in the Code of Honor last week.
Yeah.
It's what you do with that stuff that matters.
Amen.
Yeah. I'm holding T.S. Eliot with me, but what gives it meaning is that you carry it into your life and think about those things and what does that mean and how do I break out and how do I not be the Prince Hamlet or the not the prince the attendant
Horatio.
Yeah, the obtuse fool. Mm-hmm. How do I do more?
But if you're going to be the obtuse fool, by God, be the best one you can be.
Yes. Yes. So I should have been a pair of ragged claws sculling across the floors of silent seas.
See, it always amazes me that you pull that stuff out, and that you pull out the Star Trek quotes like nothing. Of course, you listen to it so much that
Yep, it's memorized.
It's memorized,
most of it.
But
and still enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that kind of stuff rattling in my head. I guess I have different things, but
yeah, it's just how the sectors are arranged in your hard drive. So, but that's
very true. Although it's all solid state, I don't think they have sectors anymore.
Good,
not in the same way.
Good for you. Haven't overwritten all of mine. But that's just in there, and it's meaningful, and I got to think about it every once in a while, and
It just goes to show you this is the sort of thing that is worthwhile. It is worthwhile teaching this stuff. Even if your teenage kids hate it, it is worthwhile. It may not stick. It won't stick with everybody. But if you get it to stick with one or two, then it's time well spent.
Time well spent indeed.
Yeah. And again, this stuff was not the norm.
Right.
This was on the verge of subversive when Eliot wrote it. But he had people who recognized the quality of it, recognized what it could mean, and got it out there and made Eliot famous. And, it's a cultural criticism. And we appreciate people that are willing to take on the prevailing culture.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And do something constructive.
Right.
Again, it's
install
one thing,
plumbing.
Yeah, it's one thing to tear down, but it's another to build on what you observe, like a Chesterton or an Eliot. So he's definitely an invite to dinner person.
Oh yeah, yeah,
very much so.
So, brother, what's next time?
Absolutely nothing.
That's very true.
That's very true.
You've been waiting to use that, haven't you?
Bet your ass I've been waiting to use that one. That's right. Absolutely nothing. We're going to talk about the show about nothing. It's pop culture next time. So, and one of the big 90s in particular popular touchstones was that show about nothing, Seinfeld. Genius in so many levels, and yet something that defies categorization in many other ways. We're going to go deep with that next time.
Hope you enjoyed another pointless discussion of eternal questions. Remember, new episodes published every Friday at noon Eastern.
Spread the word. We're on all the major podcast platforms. And leave us a comment or review because that helps others find us.
We're on Instagram, Twitter, as well as our website, snakesandotters.com.
I'm Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis. Join us next week. Same snake time, same otter channel.